Hey everyone, today I'm reviewing Goosebumps Most Wanted, Son of Slappy. This is the second book in the Most Wanted series, and I'll be honest, I didn't really have any sort of expectations going into this book. If anything, I was actually a bit apprehensive about it. As you guys know, I'm not the biggest fan in the world of the newer Goosebumps books, and this is just another Night of the Living Dummy / Slappy entry in the sub-series of Goosebumps. There's already been countless books of these, and what is R.L. Stine going to do that's new or unique that he hasn't done already before? So yeah, I didn't really have any expectations going into this one, but I will say right off the bat that I was actually a bit surprised by this one. So in this book, our main character Jackson and his younger sister Rachel go and visit their grandfather, who is a bit eccentric. He likes to collect very odd and strange things. He has a lot of just these very mysterious collections. He has a bunch of like shrunken heads, for example, and just a bunch of other really random stuff. And of course, he also happens to have a collection of ventriloquist dummies. And so they discover this Slappy dummy, and their grandfather tells them the story, the old legend of Slappy, of how he was cursed and came to life. And then he proceeds to tell them that this isn't the real dummy, this is just a copy. It's not the real, original Slappy. And after they're done visiting with their grandfather, and Jackson and Rachel go home, Jackson discovers that Slappy was put into a suitcase, and he assumes that it was a surprise gift from his grandfather, as Jackson was telling his grandfather how he wants to do an act, some kind of act or show to put on for the kids at school. And so he just assumes that his grandfather was the one that put the dummy in his suitcase for him. And so he keeps the dummy for a while and practices with it and plans on putting on a show. And of course, this is where the more typical stuff with these books starts to manifest, where the dummy basically, it's kind of implied that he comes to life and starts, speaking and doing some strange things. But this is where the story gets interesting. This is where R.L. Stine puts kind of a unique, fresh spin on the take of the whole Night of the Living Dummy story, and I was actually drawn into the story and kind of interested in it. So instead of going the usual route of Slappy being the primary villain and threatening the kids and wanting to turn them into his slaves and all that sort of thing, he basically has this new power where he can mind control someone. And I will admit, it's not really fully explained how he gets this power or how he is able to use this and everything. But essentially what happens is he sort of hypnotizes Jackson and mind controls Jackson into doing these absolutely terrible things. And to make matters worse, Jackson is known as kind of a goody two-shoes within the story. He's a very good kid, always well behaved and gets good grades, all that sort of stuff. His little sister is always making fun of him for being the good one of the family, the good kid. And all of a sudden, once this dummy comes to life and begins mind controlling Jackson, he just starts insulting people and starts breaking things and just starts doing all this really terrible stuff. And it's honestly quite terrifying, because everyone that Jackson knows and loves, his friends and his family, start to question him. They start to doubt who he really is. They wonder why he's behaving like this. And this completely strips Jackson of his identity, completely deconstructs this reputation that he's built up over time. It destroys who he is as a person and has him wondering himself who he really is and why this is happening to him and why he has no power over it. So yeah, I really like this kind of spin that R.L. Stine puts on the story, and it kind of makes Jackson seem like he's the villain himself instead of Slappy. And it's just kind of an interesting take, and I feel like the horror of this book really is that horror within yourself that you can't control, that's kind of transforming you into evil, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Jackson doesn't have anyone to turn to, no one to help him. He's just completely on his own to try to figure this out, and a lot of the book is not really even spent with him figuring it out, which is one of my flaws I'll get to in a moment. But it's just him kind of playing the victim as he sort of slowly transforms into this caricature of evil, much like Slappy himself, and is just committing these atrocities. So yeah, Jackson really doesn't know what to do, and things kind of spiral out of control and get worse and worse. And eventually he ends up getting grounded, and his parents want to take him to a doctor. It's implied that he's mentally unstable and they need to take him to a psychologist. It doesn't come right out and say that, but I feel like it's pretty heavily implied. And Jackson eventually kind of figures out how to stop this, how to return back to normal, or at least he thinks he does. So this isn't really a spoiler, minor spoiler, I guess. This is revealed somewhat early on in the story, but there's a trigger that Slappy actually has that makes Jackson start to fall under his mind control, basically, and that is a bird chirping. And every time Jackson hears a bird chirp, whether it be on media, like on a phone or something, just the sound of it, or a real bird chirping, that's what triggers Jackson to fall under Slappy's mind control and start doing all of these horrible things. And he discovers that this entire time, there's the trigger, the bird chirping, was part of a video game on his device. And so Jackson leaves it at home and decides to go to this show and put on this act with Slappy anyway and entertain these kids and everything. And from there, things go even further downhill. The horrible acts continue and increase, and there really is no happy ending for Jackson, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But yeah, this one really surprised me. I actually felt bad for Jackson. I was kind of drawn into the story. I really liked how it was set up too. I liked them going to the grandfather's house, and I liked the descriptions of the house and all of his eccentric and crazy collections. And I was actually thinking that Jackson was going to return to grandfather's house to try to find a resolution to his problem, to talk to his grandpa for help. But we never got that. I was kind of surprised. And in the second half of the story, Jackson just kind of continues to play the victim and doesn't really spend much time reflecting upon this problem or trying to figure out how to resolve it. Things just keep compounding on top of each other, and things just get progressively worse for him. And I will admit that the emotion kind of lost its effect for me in this second half of the story, because it does get a little bit repetitive, and there's really not a lot of remorse or reflection from Jackson. Things just kind of seem to keep getting worse, but yeah, I don't know. The second part of the story just felt a little bit repetitive for me. And then towards the end, I liked the ending of this one. There wasn't like a huge twist ending to this one. It follows along the same lengths as the rest of the story. The ending felt fairly suitable. This one doesn't have a twist that's completely out of left field like a lot of these newer Goosebumps books do. But there was one aspect to the ending that I didn't like as much, and I'm not going to spoil it. But that particular aspect of the ending, one of the big reveals, I guess you could say, I didn't really care for that as much. That one did feel a little bit out of the blue, out of place kind of, and I could have done without that part. But the ending itself, I feel like, is very suitable for the rest of the book. And I will say that I really did enjoy this one. It surprised me. Definitely one of the better Most Wanted books in the Goosebumps series. And yeah, besides a few minor flaws I have with it, like I said, being it a little bit repetitive in the second half of the book, and I wished Jackson would have spent more time trying to figure out what to do instead of just kind of playing the victim and going along with these atrocities that he's committing. And he didn't really show a lot of remorse for them either in the later part of the story, which kind of created that more detached feeling, and I wasn't as drawn into the story like I was in the first half. But overall, I was surprised that R.L. Stine was able to come up with a new spin for this book. It didn't feel like just the same old with the Night of the Living Dummy and Slappy books. It's a little bit unique and kind of scary, honestly. Kind of a dark book, and kind of sad also, as Jackson's character is just reduced to nothing, essentially. Everyone loves him and cherishes him as this really good kid. He gets good grades, he gets along with everyone, and his character is just reduced to nothing in a matter of days as Slappy basically takes over his life. So one other thing too I forgot to mention is this book is called Son of Slappy, and as you guys can probably tell from the cover, there's like a junior Slappy that he's holding, and it's a little bit misleading. There's just one dummy, just Slappy, and at one point in the book, Slappy refers to Jackson as his son. So that's kind of where the title comes from, but the cover art is a little bit misleading. And I'm not a huge fan of this cover all that much, to be honest. Like, it's just okay, I guess, but I don't know. Not the best cover in the world. I prefer the older look of Slappy the Dummy from Goosebumps. But anyways, yeah, this was a pretty decent book. I had a few issues with it, but overall, I was surprised by this one. I enjoyed it. Definitely one of the better Most Wanted books. I would recommend checking this one out if you're a fellow Goosebumps fan. I'd probably give this book a 3, maybe a 3.5 out of 5 stars, somewhere around there. But yeah, anyway, at this point, I've read almost all of the Most Wanted books, and I'm gonna continue to read the ones that I haven't read yet, and I'll probably reread a couple that I read a long time ago and I don't really remember that well, and then I'll do a ranking at the end. So I believe in the past, one of my past videos, I mentioned that I probably won't do a Most Wanted ranking just because, again, I'm not a big fan of these newer Goosebumps series all that much. But at this point, I've read almost all of them, so I might as well do a ranking. So yeah, guys, keep on the lookout for more Goosebumps Most Wanted reviews in the future. And let me know what your thoughts are on this book if you've read it. Son of Slappy. This was a pretty good one. I liked it. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.